Without further ado, we welcome Senator Josh Becker to the stage.
Hello. Thanks, everyone. This is awesome. Now, you'll get my slide deck up. First of all, I just want to say I want to thank Hoy for all she does. Where is she? There she is. A little round of applause. Because I know that I'm up 24/7 thinking about this issue and reading every article. And if I send it around, if I post it, I know there's at least one person's going to click on it and like it, and that's what because she's going to read everything, and she's going to see everything, and she's going to be the next step ahead of me and telling me what we're going to do locally on that issue. So one thing that we were just talking about before this is that when you speak, public officials listen. And I've seen this at all levels. I've seen it at the city council meetings where you're sitting there for hours, and then as soon as a young person comes up to testify, everybody perks up. They all perk up, they all listen. And that happened when we did the first all-electric new building standard in Menlo Park. And youth came to testify there. And as we now know, so many cities have done that, and I see many other climate champions here in this room. Many other cities did it, and San Jose, Oakland, and then New York City just announced an all-electric new building standard. And that's how change happens, right? That's huge. Round of applause for that. That's big. Round of applause. It's positive stuff. And you see, there is a lot to be worried about, there's a lot to be scared about, there's a lot to be concerned about. But when we see action like that, we see that's how change happens. That was within a year, really. Basically, it started at a local level, little city level, and then now we see, New York City, big city in the country, adopting all-electric new building standards. So that's how change happens. And at each step of the way, when young people speak, people listen. I was just in D.C. I mentioned with Ed Markey and his chief of staff, and Ed Markey was co-author of the Green New Deal. He said the only way that he won his election, because it's like, how do you beat a dynasty, a Kennedy dynasty in Massachusetts? He was the first one to do it. The only way he won was doubling the turnout for 18 to 34-year-olds. That was the only way he won. And I talked to chief of staff, he said, what do we have to do across the country? It's a movement of 18 to 34-year-olds, right? If we double the turnout 18 to 34-year-olds, we win. We win Senate seats in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and other key states. And we get to do what we need to do here, because even in California, we have a lot to be proud of, but we've got a lot of work to do. One thing I said in COP, we have been reducing our emissions about 1% a year here in California. 1% a year. That's not bad, right? Overall, we've reduced our emissions 20% per capita, while growing our economy by 60%. Pretty amazing, right? We reduced 20% per capita emissions, growing our economy by 60%. But while we've been reducing our emissions 1% a year, to hit our 2030 goals, we have to reduce our emissions 4% a year. Big increase. To hit our 2045 goals, we have to do that 25 years in a row. Right? 4% emissions, 25 years in a row. But the good news is the solutions are out there, right? You see my climate blog getting to zero. Who's read my climate blog? Some people? All right, we got 2 timid hands. All right. I would get Joe. So this is about young people. Where's Joe? Joe here. Joe's incredible. Joe's been a key part of that. He's really been helping each step of the way with that. And it just shows, again, I can't do what I do, anything that I do without the support of great people around me. And Joe's been just amazing, just jumping in. But one of the things we said is we now have the technology, right? The technology is now here. And that wasn't true when I started this work 20, 30 years ago. We knew we could get close, but we couldn't solve this, we couldn't solve that. Now we know the technology's here. Right? Greta's saying the same thing. Greta said the climate crisis has been solved. We have the facts, we have the solutions. Now we just need the political will. And that's really what it is. It's because it's transforming every aspect of our economy. And that's not easy to do, but it's doable. We have the technology, we have the solutions now to do it. We just have to do it at every level. At the city level, at the regional level. We're blessed to have our CCAs. You guys know what CCAs are, right? Because you guys are informed. A lot of people don't know. You guys know. Okay. And we have some leaders here. And Silicon Valley Clean Energy doing amazing work. Municipal Clean Energy, amazing work And I mean, they're doing the kind of experiments that now I can take at the state level, we prove at the state level, we prove at the national level. So at the city level, at the regional level, and the state level, we need to do these solutions. So is somebody going to click along?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Tara. All right. So I'll kind of go through this quickly because I want to leave some time for a few questions. But you guys all know what COP was, and the whole point was these NDCs, right? These promises, and getting people to increase their commitments. Because Paris was a chance to bring everyone together. This was sort of a chance to come back together and say, okay, what have we done? And so, knew the promises weren't going to add up to where we needed to be at 1.5 degrees, but we wanted to see real action and a real coming together, a real sense of momentum. Next slide. And so there was some notable progress, right? The methane pledge was significant. We all know, we have to reduce methane. This was a 30% pledge, and there was some nations that are big emitters that were absent, but a lot were there. Deforestation, really significant. 85%, countries representing 85% of the forests in the world committing to deforestation, to stop deforestation. That was huge. India, for the first time, even though they watered down the phase out coal to phase down coal, they were there making pledges. There was a progress, even though China was not there, and they're, of course, about 1/3 of the world's emissions right now, at the leadership level, but there was an announcement there with John Kerry that they made. So some positive steps. Car manufacturers, 11 car makers, 23 countries committed to ZEV-only cars by 2040. Right, so some tangible steps. Next slide. But, what's the bad news? You guys know the bad news. So the Earth is still, even with these projections, we're currently too warm by a crazy amount. At the time of the dinosaurs, when you had crocodiles above the alligators above the Arctic Circle, it was only 4 degrees warmer than it is today, right? So we're still on a bad path, and no single country really has sufficient short-term policies in place. Next slide. So why are we there? So we're there to basically, a couple of reasons. To say, hey, to show how it can be done. Like I said, we reduce emissions 20% per capita, while we're in our economy 60%. And also that Silicon Valley is the hub of innovation for the world. A lot of this is going to have to come through technology. Like I said, much of which we have today, and much of which is being developed right around us here today. But also we're looking at best practices from the rest of the world. And that's really what a lot of this is about. We need to evidence best practices from the Nordic states, Nordic countries, and bring that here. We want to look, I went to Portugal to do a whole offshore wind piece. So we got to find the best practices from other countries and other states in the US, because we were the leader, and we are in many ways, but now other states are passing us in certain policies. That's great. We got to now catch up to them. So that's really where we went. Next slide. Oh, I can't really read this. It's very yellow. Basically, it kind of talks about some of what we've done in the past. My hope was that if enough countries and enough big states like California, because California, as you know, is, of all the economies in the world, like we were our own country, what economy would we be?
5.
Yes, 5th largest economy. So if you get enough countries, big states like California, we could bring down the cost. So it's just like solar's come down 90% over 10 years. So 90%. Since 1970, it's come down 300%. Right? So we got to bring down the cost of these technologies by using them. And that's what we're working to do. And this also creates tremendous economic opportunities. And the fact that other states are looking to follow our example from California. Next slide. Next session, I'll be chairing a new subcommittee. So the Pro Tem, who's our head of the Senate, Tony Atkins, she created a new subcommittee for me on our clean energy future. And guess what our first hearing is? Our first hearing is on 24/7 clean energy. So 24/7 clean energy, they say that's like going from 100% renewable to 24/7 clean energy is like going from preschool to grad school. So it's a big leap, but who's committed to doing it? Peninsula Clean Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and Sacramento SMUD. So we're going to have those be 3 people who will be testifying in our very first hearing. Next slide. The big picture, we won't go through this, but study this if you haven't, because we have to be really evidence-based. And so I'd like to say where the emissions coming from. The electric grid, about 15%. Great, what are we doing there? Transportation, about 50%. Great, what are our plans there? Clean homes, clean buildings. Buildings are about 10% of our GHG emissions. What are we doing there? And then finally, industrial and agriculture. What are our plans there? So I won't go into it all the time now, but the great news is there's lots of ways for all of you to get involved, right? Because it's every aspect of the economy. If you care about farming, great, ways to get involved. If you want to tackle the industrial stuff, great. If you want to work on, buildings, lots of opportunity. Next slide. So I mentioned 24/7 clean energy, and I want to go into the details of this slide, but the point is, we're doing great on a clear day in the summertime. We've got lots of solar, lots of wind. We're using very few fossil fuels during the day. But at a time like this, the peak is now from 4 to 9 p.m. 4 to 9 p.m. People are coming home, plugging in their EVs, and that's the peak now. And we use about 90% fossil fuels during that time, right? So that's what we have to address. And I had a bill last year on 24/7 clean energy. I appreciate the support. We'll be back again to try to solve this, and again, working with our local institutions here that are doing this. Next slide. I mentioned PCE, so this was we kept this from a previous presentation. Next slide. But again, those PCE and Silver Clean Energy are doing great, innovative projects. For example, Silver Clean Energy, where they're getting contractors, paying them to electrify their own homes. That way, they're not the obstacle anymore. They're actually out there doing this. We got to get EVs to low-income populations. That's what this bill is all about that I had last year. This one did not pass. We'll be back with this. We'd love your support. Next slide. Keep going. Next slide. Let's go down a little bit. So this is really wonky. Who knows? So if cement was a country, what emissions? Would it be like the first emitter or like the 10th emitter? Anybody have any guesses? Who knows? Anybody? Third. That's actually right. That is right. Sorry, I gotta take this jacket off. So it'd be the third largest emitter. Hold on a second. Ooh, it's hot here. Okay, just getting warmed up. It'd be the third largest emitter. And many of you know, and I just was there, we have Lehigh Cement, obviously right here in Cupertino. So the question is how to get cement to net zero. We have to tackle it. Globally, it's about 7 to 8% of carbon emissions. And cement, as you can think of, is like this, it's like the flour in the cake of concrete. Most emissions are coming from cement. And so, first year, it's like, we got to tackle this. So we worked with the industry, we came up with a solution. Keep going. Next slide. And this is what we did. So we've got a bill passed at net zero for cement by 2045. Now again, cement, it's always not as sexy as subject to talk about cement and concrete, but this is what it's about. We've got to tackle the issue at all levels, right? It's not just buying EV, that's great, we want to do that, but we've got to tackle it at all levels. So we're going to reduce it 40% by 2035, and then next year we'll be back, you can keep building. This slide next year we'll be back with a bill to make sure the state buys this low carbon concrete and cement, because that's what has to happen, right? The state buys 40% of the concrete and cement in the state, so let's buy low carbon cement. So keep going, there'll be a couple more build outs here. So this one passed 596. Next year, we'll be back with the demand pull side of concrete. Next slide. And this is one thing I announced at Confidence that there's my real efforts is we have to have the state government lead by example. So we got to get, if we want the whole economy to be net zero by 2045, let's have the state be there by 2035. And so if we do that, and we do it for electricity actually by 2030, after I said this, Biden announced the whole country will be there by 2050. It's his goal to be net zero. So we got to have California lead the way. Next slide. This is about build a little bit. And last thing is build clean faster. We have to be able to move faster at every level. And I can talk a lot about this, but that's one of the key parts. Next slide. And just keep kind of build these out. So these are some of the other things that we're thinking about. And that's really where we are right now. Myself, Senator Cortese, Chicago, who we're going to see in a minute, Alex Lee, we're all saying, great, what are the ideas now that we're going to do for next year? So this is a great time to weigh in and to get involved and say, what are the policies that we think are going to move the needle? And that's all that matters, right? How are we going to continue to move the needle in all those areas that I outlined? So I know that was a lot of stuff, but I'm happy to take any questions that people have for the time that I have remaining. Questions? Let's see if that many that you have questions first. You guys can applaud too, by the way, if you want. Thank you. I know it was a lot of information. And I want to highlight this guy with a big sign on his chest. Sven, because that's an example of activism. It just, when we got there, and something I was already, partial to, but he said, if we're going to electrify transportation, what about people living in multifamily? We're building all these buildings, apartment buildings, that have no charging infrastructure. And we all know that people charge at home. And so he said, we got to do something about this. We've got involved, we got people organized, we got it much, much better. Still not as good as it needs to be, and we're going to keep working on it. But example of the activism that comes out of this area. Sorry, any questions?
Yeah. How do you guys, there was a fight in the portfolio about building a new dam. So how do you propose not building a new dam and also getting water?
Well, that's a water question. So I'm not an expert yet on that issue about the water supply. I will tell you this, because I've done a number of things. Water is going to be another huge issue for the future of the state. So speaking here to all the youth that are here, water is going to be a huge issue. The good news is, we listen to Misha Jambi, the expert at Stanford, runs the Water in the West. I've had her 2 things already. So there's a lot of fluff in our system. Israel, for example, as a country, they recycle 90% of their water. Recycle. We recycle about 4%. So there's just a lot of fluff in our system and a lot that we can do. So we'll defer on that question for later. Anyone else? Questions? We have one to that?
Yeah, are there any plans or ideas you have to address transportation emissions at the state level?
Yeah, we do. So we put $3.9 billion, almost $4 billion in the budget last year for EV infrastructure, right? Because that's what everyone wants to see. People have range anxiety and they want to see there's places to charge. Now again, we all know most people charge at home. So that's really the fight that we're still fighting in these areas. But that's $4 billion. The other thing, I had that bill I told you about that didn't succeed, shall bring back, which is how do we provide the incentives, for example, removing the sales tax for used EVs, especially for low-income populations in the state. So there's a lot of work we're doing now, very small nonprofit, based also in our area, called Cultura. They did the initial research on this, but they're super users, people who just drive a lot. And how do you get the people that drive a lot to switch? That's really key, because if I switch from my Chevy Volt to a Tesla, great. We'll save about 300 gallons of gas a year. But someone else, they're going to save 30,000 gallons of gas a year. Right? So how do we target that? So it's a lot that we're doing. We have 2 questions here.
How are you going to address affordability as a problem when it comes to a lot of getting people and individuals in general to adopt zero EV cars, for example, or renewable energy? Because a lot of times those are a lot more they're out of the budget expense for low-income families. So how are you going to address that?
How are we going to help low-income families? Yeah. Well, I think it's critical. I think it's a moral question, also a political question, because I have a colleague right now in the state senate. She says I represent a bunch of workers of this ethnicity, and they make $49,000 a year, right? And I don't think any subs for them. So if that's true, they're not going to support it. So it's a moral question, a political question. I think that's what we have to do right now, especially with the budget surplus. We have enough money. We have a cap and trade system, right? I wish we had a carbon tax, but we have a cap and trade system. The whole point of that is, we're generating a lot of money. Now we should be using that money to help everyone, especially low-income Californians, help everyone electrify and help everyone come along. So that's what we have to do this year.
So you're talking about how you want to add more EV chargers. Are you proposing that just new buildings have EV chargers, or even existing buildings and more EV chargers? Are you going to target both or just one?
Well, really both. But certainly for new ones. It's so much cheaper to do it the first time. So that's why Sven and I, that's why we're working on this. It's so much cheaper to do it right there. We have 90,000 units we're going to build, multifamily, in the next few years. So that's a no-brainer. But yes, absolutely work on retrofitting existing ones as well. And I think, again, that's the opportunity, that's jobs, that's still a big opportunity to kind of go in and do it, help people electrify their homes, including putting in chargers. But the good news is, in many cases, you don't have to do that. Okay, we're going to have to stop in a minute. But in many cases, for most individuals, single-family homes, you can just plug in now, right? But we have to make sure everyone has enough capacity, and we're working on that as well. All right, so we're going to have to stop. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the work that you're all doing. I hope this was a lot of information, not too much information, but I know that you're a sophisticated audience, that you can kind of handle these topics. But I just appreciate your advocacy and look forward to continuing to work with you all.